They won't make it if we don't close the gate right now!
Want to hear something wild? I probably set a record for dealing with HOA violations. 139 of them vanished in a single day, and this story involves my family's land. A lake that shouldn't exist, an HOA president drunk on power, and the simple physics of water and gravity. For 5 generations, my family owned over 2,000 acres of Appalachian hill country. And back in the 1920s, my great-great-grandfather Angus, a civil engineer, built a stone dam where 3 creeks met, creating a 700-acre lake called Loch Mloud with a lodge on the high ground that I call home today. The dam was masterfully engineered for flood control, and our family maintained it for generations, while the deed and water rights remained airtight. Everything belonging to the Mloud Trust. 3 years ago, developers bought adjacent land and created Lakeview Pinnacle Estates, a luxury gated community that was fine by me until Brenda McLaughlin became HOA president, driving her white Escalade and wearing resort wear while treating my ancestral lake as her community's prize asset, sending passive-aggressive newsletters about our community lake and demanding I update my dock to match their approved colors. I politely reminded her that HOA rules ended at my property line, which didn't go over well since she saw a scruffy bachelor in an old stone house and didn't realize I was a hydrological engineer who'd spent his life understanding the dam that created her lake view. Brenda announced a community recreation area with beaches and piers that was completely on my property. And when I sent a cease and desist, she claimed their survey showed different boundaries. So I found a fraudulent plat map at the county office that had shifted the property line to steal 50 acres of my shoreline using a surveyor who'd lost his license years earlier for document fraud. I gathered ironclad proof with original deeds and GPS surveys expecting an apology. But instead she called it harassment and doubled down, declaring at the HOA meeting they'd proceed immediately with bulldozers arriving Monday morning. And when I called the sheriff, he said it was a civil matter for the courts since Brenda knew litigation takes years and she had a 6-month window before our hearing. In that window, she didn't just build a beach, but constructed 139 luxury vacation cabins along my stolen shoreline, betting no judge would order demolition of a multi-million-dollar development once finished. But while she focused on construction, I focused on something she'd forgotten: I controlled the water. In my great-grandfather's journal from 1928, I found the key detail: the lake's normal level was maintained at 1,838 feet elevation for recreation, but the natural high water mark was 1,845 feet, a 7-foot safety buffer built into the dam's design. And when I pulled out topographic maps, I realized my lodge sat safely above 1,850 feet, while those 139 cabins had foundations between 1,839 and 1,844 feet, meaning every single cabin sat within that buffer zone and was technically in the lake bed. I spent weeks documenting everything with time-lapse cameras and drone footage. Then my lawyer drafted a final letter informing the HOA they'd illegally built on my property within the dam's flood easement, and that for urgent structural maintenance the lake would be returned to its natural maximum elevation of 1,845 feet, giving them 48 hours to evacuate. But Brenda ignored it and started moving in furniture instead. The morning the deadline expired, I drove to the dam, called the sheriff's office to report routine maintenance that would raise the water level over 12 to 24 hours since all adjacent owners had been notified in writing, then entered the dam's concrete gallery and began turning those massive wheel valves, cranking them for 3 hours, following my great-grandfather's operational sequence as the gates slowly closed and the lake began to rise. By noon, water touched the lowest cabin's turf. By 1 p.m. it covered their yards. And by 4 p.m., the lowest cabins were islands with water halfway up their doors as electrical systems shorted out and building materials floated away. While Brenda arrived in her Escalade screaming fury, but nature just kept calmly reclaiming what was hers. By evening, 5 feet of water swamped the first floor rose completely, and the entire development was a waterlogged disaster. And when the sheriff came demanding my arrest, I showed him the certified mail receipt, blueprints, riparian rights, and operational manual, explaining I was performing a legitimate maintenance procedure as the dam's legal operator. And the deputy realized he wasn't looking at a crime, but a self-inflicted wound. The investor's insurance denied all claims, citing gross negligence and the fraudulent survey. Lawsuits flew everywhere. Brenda was voted out. The HOA went bankrupt, and the developers sold the remaining land for pennies to a conservation trust. Well, I left the water at 1,845 feet for a full month, letting it soak into every joint and fill every cabin with silt and mold before slowly lowering it back to normal, revealing cabins wrecked beyond repair. I hired salvage crews and spent a year demolishing all 139 structures and removing debris, paying for it by selling scrap and winning court judgments. Then brought in restoration specialists who replanted 50 acres with native species and restored the natural shoreline, so that within 2 years you couldn't tell the cabins had existed as the oaks grew back. Birds returned, and quiet settled over Loch Mloud once more. I never wanted to be a villain or hero, just wanted to be left alone on land my family had cared for through 5 generations. But Brenda saw my heritage as a commodity and my patience as weakness, learning that some boundaries are absolute and that nature, properly directed, delivers the ultimate justice. That's how I fixed 139 HOA violations in one afternoon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.